If you've ever seen a starry night sky in the countryside, then you know the feeling of being fully aware and present to something special, witnessing without limits the brilliance of the stars. Now, imagine that a fog suddenly covered the sky. No matter how much you strain to see clearly, you can't. For millions of Americans who suffer from anxiety, depression, attentional learning, or temper problems, this is what life is like for them. Try as they may, they find it difficult to live full and happy lives, for reasons that may have been out of their control. Until now. Advances in neuroscience have shown that millions of people suffering from these problems may actually have brain abnormalities from causes such as substance abuse, trauma, stress, or genetic factors. Now, many of these limiting conditions can be identified and treated, often with surprisingly positive results.
Your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, how well you get along with other people. When your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain doesn't work right, it is very hard for you to be your best self.
The brain is the most complicated organ in the universe. It is estimated that the brain has over 100 billion neurons, with more cell connections in our brain than there are stars in the universe. Dr. Daniel Amen and the Amen Clinic work with a revolutionary brain imaging technique called SPECT that allows them to accurately see how the brain works. Until recently, there hasn't been a good way to see how the brain worked. Physicians and mental health professionals have been working in the dark, making diagnoses on complex disorders based upon patient interviews and symptom clusters, much the same as has been done for over 100 years.
There's a lot of research that doctors aren't aware of that correlates blood flow in the brain with clinical symptoms.
Well, it's standard practice in most areas of medicine, like in cardiology or in gynecology, that doctors would look at the organ that they treat. But psychiatrists are the only medical specialists that never look at their organ, the brain. They never look at it before they treat it. I mean, you would never let a mechanic work on your car unless he was able to pop the hood and turn it on.
I think I have a bad temper with myself. I think I get angry at myself a lot, kind of yell at myself internally. Pushed to a certain degree, I definitely can lose my temper. Normally, day to day, I have a pretty generalized sense of like worrying and concern and wanting things to really work this certain way. I think I'm really concerned about like what everyone is thinking in my immediate environment.
Now there is a medical breakthrough that promises to radically change the way psychiatrists and mental health practitioners diagnose and treat their patients.
SPECT is very easy to understand. It's a brain scan that basically tells us three things: areas of the brain that work well, areas of the brain that work too hard, and areas of the brain that do not work hard enough.
SPECT scans provide crucial information to aid physicians at the Amen Clinic in recommending targeted treatments, from medication to meditation, to balance brain function, to enhance the underactive areas and calm down the overactive ones. These techniques are based on more than 16,000 patient scans and hundreds of scientific studies. They are changing the ways doctors think about the brain and the importance of optimizing its function for a healthy, happy life.
So in some ways, what Dr. Amen's done is almost like the purest form of research. No outside interest funding him. He's just doing good clinical work.
Dr. Amen is an award-winning neuropsychiatrist and teacher who over the past 12 years has gained national acclaim for his pioneering brain imaging work. He has written 19 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. At the Amen Clinics in Fairfield and Newport Beach, California, patients and their doctors are given a window into the brain, literally a chance to look at the most important organ in their body to discern and detect problems.
So Chris, would you say that mood instability is the biggest problem for you?
Yeah, I think for, 5, 6, 7 years, it's become more of an extreme challenge, mood instability of mood.
There are many people who are anxious or depressed or obsessive, prone to anger, they have attentional problems, and they thought their problems were all in their head, purely psychological. In the research that I've done with SPECT, what we found is that these and many other problems are brain-based problems, and that when we optimize the brain, their lives become better. We often say, you know, change your brain, change your life, and that's what we've seen.
SPECT stands for Single Photon Emission Computed Tomography. In a simple procedure, a patient is injected with a compound that contains radioisotopes in a substance that is easily taken up by the brain. The isotope releases single photons that act like light beacons, tracking where the compound goes in the brain. Within 2 minutes of injecting the compound, it is taken up by the cells in the brain, where it stays fixed for 6 hours. A patient lies in a sophisticated gamma camera for about 15 minutes, while the camera takes detailed pictures of where the compound has gone in the brain. Each SPECT study is made up of about 10 million counts, or the times that the single photons hit sensitive crystals, giving a very detailed look at brain blood flow and activity patterns. A supercomputer then processes the data into elegant three-dimensional images that help physicians see which areas of the brain work well, which areas work too hard, and which areas do not work hard enough. The Amen Clinic typically does 2 SPECT studies on patients, one when the patient is at rest, and one during a concentration task. This shows what happens when the brain is concentrating on everyday challenges, and when compared to resting studies, often shows problematic activity patterns like ADD.
As opposed to the anatomical CT or MRI scans, SPECT scans show how the brain works, how the brain functions. And the problems we deal with in psychiatry are really not problems of structure, what the brain looks like. It's problems of how the brain works. So SPECT is a much more helpful tool for us in psychiatry.
By having the scans, I can better figure out what it is my patients need. I've even gotten to the point where as I take a history, I can hear the different brain systems speaking to me. And I'll get an idea what medicines will be useful given what's presented to me.
And I've seen a lot of parents come to me, you know, we've already done this and I can't do that. And I says, if you get it scanned, you know if it's ADHD, you know if it's anxiety and depression, you know which medicine is going to help your kid versus having your kid be